Talk to
Ask
me.
a direct question, and I'll give you a direct answer.
Well, then tell me about Arturo Gatti, the person.
Nicest guy in the world, a heart of gold, a lot of fun to be around, very generous, a humanitarian, very considerate of others, very thoughtful, extremely intelligent, very well spoken. Just a really great guy to be around and a real good friend.
So talk to me, like, how long have you known him? How long did you know him?
Approximately 20 years.
And tell me, like, you say he's a humanitarian. Give me some examples of that.
Well, anytime we would go out, like we would go on the holidays, we would go over and see the Christmas Spectacular. Pat would arrange tickets for Arturo, and he would take my wife and I and the girl that he was dating at the time, and we'd go to a dinner and a show. And as we would park the car and walk down the street, we'd find people that were misfortunate, homeless. Some people prefer to call them bums, but they were homeless people that were down on their luck or they had mental disease or whatever. And he would be so adamant about reaching into his pocket and giving them all money. But as he would give them the money, he would tell them, whatever you do, don't make me come back and see you drinking, buy food with it. I mean, he didn't have to do that. He would stop and talk to people that you would veer around and walk away from out of fear because they look crazy or they're wearing 10 coats and they're pulling shop. He'd walk straight up to them and say, here, take this for you, buy some food. I hope this helps you. I mean, it didn't happen like once or twice. It happened numerous times. He was just how can I say, his heart, he wore it on his sleeve. He's just generous that way and other ways as well. One night we were in Canada, we were coming out of a nightclub, a restaurant, and we hear from we didn't know where the guy was, but we hear Arturo Gatti, it was Montreal, and the guy was a Frenchman, he was, he had that accent, and he called out his name, and we were looking for the guy. We didn't see him anywhere. He was laying up against the building, almost blended into it. And Arturo turned around and goes, oh my God, that guy's calling me on the floor, the guy that's homeless. And Arturo said to him, you know me? He goes, yeah, I used to watch you when I owned the TV. Oh, it's like he hit us in the heart. We just finished coming out from eating these big meals, and we were full. We were wearing shielding jackets. It was freezing out in Canada. And I had to reach in my pocket because, again, like I said, when we would go out to New York, he'd give somebody money, I'd give somebody money. As we walked down the streets on our way to the restaurant or to the comedy club or the show that we watched, he reached into his pocket and he must have gave this guy untold amount of money. Hundreds. He wasn't giving him $10 bills or singles, he was giving the guy hundreds. And the guy looked down at the money, he was like stunned. He thought Arthur was kidding. He goes, take that, but don't ever let me see you drinking with my money. He goes, I bleed for that money. The guy looked at him and goes, you changed my life. Several years later, that guy approached us one day, and he told us with that money he went and got a suit, a shave, and he was able to start all over again, and turned his life around from a bum on the street, from Arturo's generosity. Arturo cried, so humbled by it. He hugged the guy hugged him, and he left. Did you see, Mike? You never know what you could do one day, just helping people with give them a little shot. That's Arturo Gatti. When he spoke of his mother, his brother, his sisters, his nieces, his nephews, he spoke about them with so much love and compassion. He's just passionate about his family. He loved his daughter. He loves his children. Oh my God, he was so attached. He couldn't do enough for them. I mean, nobody even instructed him before he got into a legal battle with Erica over the finances and the amounts of money. The baby was 2 days old. He went right to the bank and he put money in the account, like $250,000, to make sure she had a college fund and a future. The first thing he did was before any fights. You tell me. There's a guy that's a boxer. They say, oh, boxers are punchy. Arturo wasn't punchy. Arturo was thoughtful, and he thought things out. And if he didn't have the advice, he'd call Pat Lynch. He'd call myself, or he'd call an attorney, depending on what line of where it went and how to go with it. If it was a legal situation, or if it was a family situation, he'd kick it around with the friends or the family to get some insight so he could make an intelligent decision, an educated decision, or to confirm his beliefs and thoughts. He's one of those guys that really, he considered it all. He didn't just look at one side.
I talked to Pat, and he always says it was very difficult to watch Arturo fight. I mean, how was it like when you're watching Arturo in those life and death bouts with
Oh, come on, man. My palms were sweating. I was sitting on the edge of my seat. I had knots in my stomach, butterflies. You didn't know if he was going to get hurt, if he was going to get knocked out, and then out of nowhere, he knocked the guy out, and you sit there and you're like, Jesus Christ, I'm glad this is over. I mean, it was like a roller coaster ride. But it was the most exciting time in my life, knowing that I'm sitting there watching my friend fighting in that ring, and then sitting next to Pat Lynch. You know, you think Pat was Pat loved Arturo so much that every time Arturo got punched, Pat would wince. That's how connected they were. You know, when Arthur was fighting, I think it was Leonard Doran, and they were going at it, and you know, Leonard was a little tough kid. You know, he can't take nothing from him. He was a tough guy. And every time he was getting hit by him, Pat was going like this, and you see Pat wincing, and he's whacking me with his elbow. I said, Pat, you're beating me up. I feel like I'm in the fucking ring with Arthur. And he started laughing. He goes, oh. And then he's yelling, turn him around, turn him around. He's banging me with his arm again. Look at that, Pat. Like, but, you know, the emotion that Pat brought to Arturo's fights was genuine. The feeling he had for the kid was a father-son relationship. He absolutely adored Arturo because he knew Arthur was genuine, Arthur was real, Arturo had a heart, and he knew that Arturo loved him, and Arturo legitimately loved him. He trusted Pat Lynch like no other. I was fortunate enough to be trusted by him as well, but not to the extent that he had trusted Pat, because, you know, Pat handled all his finances and all that kind of stuff. I wasn't savvy with that stuff. I didn't have that type of knowledge or that kind of money to invest. But Pat made sure he educated him, he steered him correctly, and he made sure he had a bright future financially, that he was going to wind up like a lot of the other fighters, that managers and promoters robbed him and took. Pat Lynch didn't take Arturo's money the last 16, 15 fights. Pat Lynch made Arturo keep all that money, and those were the biggest of the purses that Pat was entitled to quite a large amount of money. He didn't take it. You know, Pat cared for Arturo like he cared for his children, like he cares for his family. Pat loved and still loves. Arturo's dead, he still loves him. He's still putting his money where his mouth is. He's still got butterflies in his stomach as he sees the family being beaten up, his name being dragged through the mud. Pat never lets it go. Pat's like myself. Pat and I both loved Arturo deeply, so deeply that we will do anything at all costs just to clear his name. We're not on a crusade against Amanda or to hurt her. But if she killed him, we certainly will be, because she killed him and she needs to pay for it. We need to clear his name and to bring it to justice. We need justice for Arturo.
So you're going to Canada because they're, of course, I think they're in
trial right now.
Yeah.
The trial started on Tuesday. Today's Wednesday. Yesterday it started, and it's going to go for several weeks. Yeah, I'm going to go to Canada. I'm going to support his family. I love his mother. I love his brother, Fabrizio, very much. It was Arturo idolized Fabrizio. He was his kid brother. He took care of him like it was his son, you know. Arthur felt compelled to look after him because Joe had abandoned all of them. He got married and he didn't basically keep in touch with many people unless something exciting was happening. And other than that, you know, either that or he showed up with his fucking hand out. But Arturo, on the other hand, you know, never told people no. He may not have given you what you asked for the minute you asked for it. He investigated things because he was leery of people, because a lot of people took advantage of him, and people that he never would expect to have taken advantage, and he found out later it was extremely hurtful for him. But ultimately, Arthur was the type of guy that if you were in really in trouble and he knew it was for real, he didn't know how to tell you no.
I want to